Hi guys, how's it going? I wanted to do a sample gender reading using the gendered critical theory lens. Um, this is a passage from the novel where Saeed is trying to squeeze past the hallway, and the woman is blocking his pathway. Um, so if we're going to just do a close reading of this passage, we start uh, with the fact that uh, Saeed is walking alone. And in the past, when we saw someone being vulnerable, it was a woman who was walking alone, being vulnerable. We saw Nadia, we saw the Australian woman. And so in this case, we see that the gender roles are reversed, where Saeed is vulnerable because he's alone, even though as a man, you would assume that he'd be safe. In this case, Hamid, the author, sets up this fact that Saeed is alone, and so he is vulnerable. It specifically says he's without Nadia. So again, you would think in previous instances, when Saeed and Nadia were together, they could still be vulnerable. So we saw the four men chasing them on the island for the fishing pole. And so we saw that just because they're together doesn't mean that they're more protected. But in this instance, Hamid's drawing on the fact that Nadia is not there. The implication being that if she was there, maybe Saeed would not be as vulnerable in this moment. So again, we see some gender dynamics at play, where typically the woman would be the person who is most vulnerable, and having a man with her would protect her. We see the opposite at play here. Saeed is vulnerable because he's by himself, and he's even more so vulnerable because Nadia is not with him. We see a woman in a leather jacket. This is a trope that we've come across previously in the novel where women are dressed certain ways. Nadia had her motorcycle helmet that made her look tough. In this case, the woman has a leather jacket, and that makes her look really tough. It says is blocking his way with her narrow, jagged form, her back leaning against one wall, a foot planted on the other. So she's completely blocking his way in this scene, right? She's got her leather jacket on, so we know she's tough. And she's blocking his way. This is kind of like the opposite of how we see men and women act in public, right? We talk about how men sit with their legs spread wide, taking up a lot of space in public, where women are sitting more confined, right, legs crossed. In this instance, again, we see gender at play here, where Saeed is the one who's trying to squeeze himself and fit into spaces, and the woman is using her body to take up a lot of space. So again, we see gender roles flipped here. In the next sentence, we see that Saeed did not like to admit it, but he was intimidated by her intensity, and by the speed and unpredictability of her words that he often could not understand, but words that made others laugh. So part of what Saeed feels emasculated by is this lack of understanding, that other people think she's funny, and that he doesn't understand the joke. And so, again, this plays on gender dynamics. There's a lot of discussion about are women funny and women can't be funny. But here we see Saeed thinking that he's missing out on a joke and that this woman clearly is funny, and so bending the gender stereotypes that women cannot be funny. And then Saeed feeling emasculated by the fact that this woman is bending gender stereotypes and is funny, but he doesn't get the joke, and so he feels emasculated by that. So that's just a couple of sentences. What is that, like? Ooh, 2 sentences. So we unpacked a lot in just 2 sentences. But you can see that in this scene, gender is at play, and that Saeed is painted in a way that is typically more traditional for females and female stereotypes, and this woman is presented in more masculine way with more masculine stereotypes, and so we can see that gender stereotypes are being bent. and applied in different ways here. And so that's basically what you would do with a reading of gender in the novel, is you would look at how are men and women portrayed, and then kind of explore that. Um, this is different than a feminist reading, which would just focus on the female character and her presentation. So for example, if we're going to do a feminist reading of this scene, we might focus on the fact that Sayid spends all this time talking about how this woman's so empowered and she's so intimidating, and so we might explore the way that she's powerful. But then at the very end, we see that part of the way that she gets her power is there's a tough-looking Nigerian man standing behind her. And so a feminist reading we might talk about, is this woman actually breaking stereotypes? Is this woman actually self-empowered, or does she get her power and does she get her sense of confidence from the fact that she has a male companion who is able to back her up? So a feminist reading would focus on that aspect of it, whereas a gendered reading is going to look at the way that men and women are at play in the scene. So as always, let me know if you have questions, shoot me an email, hit me up on Skype, schedule a Zoom meeting, whatever's going to work for you. But let's look at this together. So if you have questions, let me know.